was especially difficult to understand the psychological process, the interior of one whose madness drove him to commit an atrocious act. And yet the ingenuity and the creativity of these filmmakers and of the artists who have put this film together has managed to do something truly exceptional. There's a remarkable performance tonight, in this film tonight. And it's truly a pleasure to welcome to the stage the director of this remarkable work, Jared Leto.
Thanks, everyone. Before we begin, I have to say thanks to John Block and P-Sarge for taking a chance on me in this film.
Okay.
And I'd like to introduce Mr. Jared Leto. Why did I feel compelled to make the film? And I suppose you really don't know the reasons why you're compelled to do something. It's a search for answers. So when you hear about this, most people hear about the event and just think that there's a guy who's crazy, and not part of the human race. But I guess there's two impulses. If something tragic happens, you either don't want to think about it or don't want to know about it, or you want to know everything you can. And the more I read, and the more I found out about what took place in these 3 days, there was a lot of meaning and a lot of answers to be happening in several of the tiny moments. And I think when something like this happens, you crave meaning and you crave answers. And that was the writing process. When you're making a film, you have to announce things in trade publications and things, and we didn't want the family to read it, to find out about it that way. So we made it clear what our intentions were and why, but there's no dialogue.
As soon as I read Jared's script, it was clear that he had a strong indication and idea of what he wanted out of this project. And immediately we both started on a very almost religious process of exploration and discovery and education, and obviously it was a very physical role, but that was really only a part of it. It was an extremely challenging and interesting and horrifying and exhilarating and really depressing journey to take. But I had a really strong partner in Jared, and we started this incredible journey together where we followed the footsteps and we traveled and we learned and we read and discovered and tried to identify a human being rather than a monster, and to see inside another person's soul, albeit a very sick and disturbed one. So it was a very physically challenging transformation, and I could talk about that for days, but I just did what I thought I needed to do to try and do a good job for Jared and everybody. She asked how much weight that I gained. 3-4 pounds, something. I gained a lot of weight. I'm 70 pounds lighter than I am now, than I was in the film. But the interesting thing about gaining the weight is that it changed everything about who I was. It changed how I walked, it changed how I talked, it changed how people treated me, how they looked at me, it changed how I laughed. And it really gave me an indication that I couldn't have gotten if I didn't go the distance with that. But, maybe I didn't need to gain as much as I did. Jared certainly encouraged me to get as fat as humanly possible. I think he was punishing me. There's something rewarding about fasting and challenging yourself when you lose weight. And I don't know if anybody out there has fasted before, but it's often a spiritual process for people, and I found that to be true when I was making Requiem for a Dream. and that put me in a place of constant starvation. And for this film, it was quite the opposite. I think that the physicality of the role, and we talked about this, Jared and I did at the very first time that we sat down and met and fell in love. We talked about how the physical aspect meant so much and really said so much about who and what Mark was. But it certainly was an unforgettable experience, and but like I said before, that was only one aspect of the journey, and he was a very complex individual, and as I got to know Mark David Chapman, I discovered a lot about him, and underneath the caricature, I suppose, underneath the idea of the monster was a multifaceted human being, albeit a sick, disturbed individual, still an individual, and it was a real distinct, disturbing honor to be able to dive into the face of the failure of humanity with this character.
I do remember when my friend Clinton Beer, who's thanked in the special thanks, introduced me to John Lennon and then told me how he died, and then a split second later said that he was going to be there in 2001 when this person was eligible for parole to shoot him. Just that simple.
Hey, what did you learn about Mark Chapman during this process? You didn't already know. What did you learn about that character, that person? What new information from this color?
Countless things. I think one of the most striking is his inability to communicate, which is the same problem that Holden Caulfield has. The answers are all right there. The answers that Mark needs are all in The Catcher in the Rye and in the music of John Lennon. They're right in front of him. They're his texts, and he still can't see it. There's a lot of John Lennon lookalikes out there, and I looked at a bunch of them, but I was going, you feel alike is what you want, and most of the people who make a living looking like John and playing his music portray him in a way where he, 6 inches above the ground. They portray him as a legend, but I was more interested in portraying him as, he had these cynical one-liners, and he's famous for the chip on his shoulder and saying exactly what he means. And the actor who portrays him has exactly that. He was the only one. Mark Lindsay Chapman, the actor who plays John Lennon, lives in Los Angeles, and we were in New York casting it, and the LA tape came in, and you're multitasking so much. I just put the tape in and sort of was watching it out of the corner of my eye, and then was struck by Mark's voice, was struck by the way he carried himself, and just the realness. And then I rewound the tape, because where I was halfway through his audition and found out that he was this actor, that he was the Mark Lindsay Chapman that was going on tape for me. And it's not the easiest thing to be like, the actor that I want to play John Lennon is named Mark Lindsay Chapman. It's only 3 days in New York City, so consistency is important, and a purity is what we were going for. And I think there's a lot of great colors in the film. We wanted to be influenced by things like The Wizard of Oz, and let's say the cover of the Sgt. Pepper record, and those kind of colors that these ideas, The Wizard of Oz and Beatlemania, and there's a lot of the same color reds that's the burgundy cover of The Catcher in the Rye. It's just all these subjects that we're dealing with are within the text of the film. All these 3 days are really well documented by the police and the Jack Jones book that we give an inspiration credit to. Barbara Walters did an interview with this person, Larry King Live. It's all true. I think we may have moved the scene from day to night and moved the location of the scene or two, but everything you see happening you think might be too unreal or is licensed is not. It's all true. Thank you again.
Thank you guys for coming.